getting us started over here. So let me see if this is going to work. Boom. Is that nice and clear for you?
Hey, John.
Beautiful. Excellent. So invest in retirement paradise. The conversation here is probably less around retiring or investing. It's more around making a new choice or a different choice. And if retirement is part of that choice, then that's great. I mean, if investment is part of that choice, then great. Or maybe it's not the right option for you either. So let's get that conversation started. So first of all, our promise of what you will take away from this conversation is why investing in Bali is a great idea. What is it that has Bali different to current reality of potentially Australia? And let me just have a look. Most of the people are here from Australia, though I have got a few other people from around the world, which is great. So some of the terminology we have this evening will be talking about some more Australian kind of languaging. However, it applies obviously to in some ways to your country as well. So we're going to talk about why Bali is a great idea in investing. I think this is why it's an enviable retirement option or choice. And this really is all around people making a different decision on really what's possible based on the reality of the actual retirement funds and mechanisms. And we're going to get Hilton to talk all about that on the call today. The keys to success in investing in Bali, and a lot of them are very similar in some ways to the ones that you would have back home. However, there's a bunch of different things here because of the current or the environment of Bali, Bali is an extraordinary destination for holiday. There's some amazing anomalies that happen here. What opportunities are available for you, and how to take advantage of those current opportunities as well. And what are your next steps? What can you actually do? What's possible for you? How do you take the next step forward? How do you understand if this is a viable option? What is it that you can do at the end of this to be able to get real clarity, so that when you walk away from the conversation today, you have someone to reach out to, a conversation to be had, and then really real clarity that will help you make a more informed decision on what you'd like to do. So that's our promise. Is that fair? Yes. You can just pop yes into our Q&A box. If you're happy with that. And of course, as part of this, there's a Q&A box. So ask questions as we go through this as well. And we'll talk you through a number of any questions that we can answer in the environment that we have around us, because we also have limited time today. Great. Okay. Massive feedback Matt is getting. All right, Matt. How's that? Hey, Hilton, do you want to put your mic on mute whilst I'm chatting?
Yep, for sure. Yep.
Cool. Let's see how is that better? How's that, everyone? Does that work better? That sounds great on my side. It's like this. Yes. Thanks. Great. Cool. Okay. All right. So a quick little introduction. Most of you know who I am, and if you don't, then there's a quick little introduction. I'll introduce you to Hilton as well. And there's a whole team behind us as well. So introducing you to the two people that you can see on the call right now. However, we have a whole team of people on the ground here in Bali. We've got a whole team of people in Australia that all represent Exquisite Properties. So myself, really my background is in entrepreneurship, online marketing and sales. And we've been building a marketing company around a number of extraordinary speakers from around the world, and really inviting people into finding different ways of doing business, different ways of living their lifestyle, different ways of investing, different ways of creating the health in your body that you'd love to achieve, So that's been a big part of our journey. I'm also an ex-developer from Australia, so been there and played the game in development with multiple unit developments. I'm currently a resident and owner and developer here in Bali. This young man who you see on the screen, with all the grey hair and all the wisdom, Hilton Parker, thank you for being on the call and giving us your time this evening. I know how valuable it is to have you here. 25 years in the building industry. This man has built hundreds and hundreds of homes and helped people into the homes of their dreams, into investments. Developer from perspective of finding, designing and having teams put the projects together for multiple families and investment focused businesses. So Hilton brings all of that, what I would call great credibility, into this conversation, because he's been there and he's been playing this game and still plays a game today. And of course, is now currently playing the game here in Bali as well. So he's now also an owner and developer here in Bali. So, I'm going to be kind of handing over in a moment to Hilton to talk about a whole bunch of different aspects of this evening. In fact, most of this evening will be Hilton's stage. So let's get started on. And of course, we're in partnership over here. Why Bali? What you'll see by John. This is the one that I want to introduce you to, because of course here I am sitting on this side of the screen. I'm here in Bali. We've actually got other people in Bali on the call, which is fantastic. And why, of course, would I be talking to you about a country or an island that I'm living on? Obviously, of course, I love it here myself. So why Bali? Let's just give you a moment to consider that 4.5 years ago, myself and my wife jumped on a plane to leave Australia with little understanding or little knowledge of what we were going to be doing and how long we're going to be here. We had in our mind 6 months to a year maximum, and 4.5 years ago that was the original intention, because we got caught up by the Bali bug, and that's not Bali belly. That's that is certainly the charm of the Balinese people, the charm of this amazing island, and then got caught up in what was possible here, what the opportunities were. So let me talk to you about what that is to me, and you'll make your own decisions, and you'll create your own conversation around this when you come and visit here. If you haven't visited Bali already, I'm assuming a lot of us, if you're from Australia, will have visited here. So number one, I talk about this whole idea of freedom, and it's this freedom of choice to live the life that you truly desire. There's something around Bali that just has a sense of freedom in it, that when I get onto a scooter in the morning and I buzz down to a local cafe, I jump onto the internet, which is free. I have a coffee, or I sit down and I do my morning ritual, whatever it might be. I can do that in the effortlessness of just feeling like I am totally free to move in the way that I want to move around. I guess a lot of you will be able to relate with this. There's something that really stood out for me when I came from South Africa and went up to Australia. South Africa is very heavily law driven, and then I went over to Australia and I realized how ridiculous law can be, and how over controlling the government can be. And what it obviously does is it takes a lot of our freedom away. And I hope you can understand where I'm coming from. If you're kind of getting what I'm saying, you just pop into the Q&A. Yeah, I get that. But yeah, I found whenever I wanted to do anything in Australia, there was 10 hoops to jump through, lines to stand in, papers to sign, and everything else, let alone the insurances and all these types of things because of what goes on. Thanks. And yeah, it kind of got to a stage where I was really at a point of saying, you know what, if this is actually the freedom lifestyle that I'm looking for, then I'm clearly in the wrong environment. So certainly, as much as there's law and stuff like that in this country, it's guidelines far more than really what I would consider law. I'd consider them guidelines. Guidelines on how you drive, guidelines on how we move through the traffic, how we decide to build our homes, how we decide to do what we do. There's a huge amount of freedom. So let me move on from that. I'm sure you're going to get what I'm saying. Security. What I've changed in the way that I'm living from a perspective of family is the security of my family. And because now I am offshore and I'm living in a different country, there's a whole different level of security that I've been able to create, which is a global financial security around myself, which is not controlled or governed by any other laws other than the international global laws that I decide on. So, and that might be a little bit cryptic. However, from my perspective, it really has given me the ability to create a system and a structure around me that secures myself and my family in a far better way than I could do in the past. Investment. So when we came over here, we had no idea what investment opportunities were here. We could see that there were lots of villas being built. We could see there's masses of hotels. However, we didn't understand that until about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, when we started looking into the property market, and what we found was quite eye-opening. And for any of you who have been here, you would have seen how much development is going on in this country, and there's a reason for it. And the reason is that, number one, this country's the actual value of property in this country is so undervalued with regards to international pricing. So you have a huge amount of that happening. And of course, we have a growth rate of what's published around about a 10% growth rate in holidaymakers into Bali every single year, year in, year out for the last 5 years. And similarly, the increase in property in actual capital growth has been quite substantial as well. Number one, to catch up to international levels, which it's nowhere close to yet. Barely scratching maybe a third or a quarter still. And of course, because of that growth rate and with all of this, all the people coming in and the demand, that's all influenced it. Where we've had certain places in Bali do 100% in capital growth in a year. Very, very centralized spaces, which is just ridiculous. And obviously, I'm not saying that that's what you're going to see all over. But we found there was an investment opportunity here, which was unlike anything that I could find in Australia. And I was doing a lot of looking around, into what was available up in the mines, and other interesting niches, which were relatively high risk for me. And of course, relatively high value as well. We're talking about $1 million units on some red sand, red dust really, or rock. So investment, massive investment opportunity. What was really interesting was what we found here, a community that was growing, and the opportunity to actually connect into a global international community has been extraordinary. The people we've met here, the level of different projects that are going on, all the way from getting involved in plastic recycling programs to organic farming villages and stuff that I dreamed about doing in Australia, but because of all of the laws and all the things that were involved in that, I couldn't even consider even trying to start something like that without having 5 years of paperwork and rubbish to kind of get through just before I can even be given a license to do anything. All of this amazing stuff is happening. And of course, for some of you, you may know this, is that you have Ubud and Bali, which is like the spiritual center right here in Indonesia. In fact, I would call it the spiritual center of Asia. That's my own opinion. Of course, retirement is the other one, which is the Bali and Indonesia has an extraordinary invitation to a whole bunch of different countries, in 9 different countries, that they're inviting retirees to come and live here, and they're giving special visas for you to be able to do that. So as a retirement option, that's extraordinary, and it's totally achievable for probably 90% of retirees. And the future of this country is extraordinary. The government's throwing lots of money in this country. There's all sorts of massive development in roads and infrastructure and stuff like that. Things like the internet are ridiculously good around this country. It's something they've done really well. There's an amazing future for us as internationals to come and live here and have an extraordinary opportunity to bring up family and live a different, this thing here, lifestyle choice. So those are my primary ones: lifestyle choice, which is, hey, this is my center. This is where I will have as my base for the future of my entire life. And from here, I can move around the world and I can do whatever I like because of the choices I get by living in this country and the returns I can get from investments. So that's probably the long-winded why Bali. Thank you for your patience with that. I'm going to hand you over to Hilton. Hilton, come jump back into the conversation. Take yourself off mute, and I'm going to bring you in, and I'm going to bring down my volume. So that's great. Let's get into some reality checks.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thanks for the introduction, and to everybody who's listening, thank you for your patience. For a start, we had a few problems with technology there, but fortunately, John is the guru with so many things, and one of them is technology. So he saved the day, and hopefully, I'll now be able to use that and give you some information that you'll be interested to hear. I'd like to, obviously Bali is a place that I guess most people who are listening will have been to, or they'll have friends who've been there. It's such a beautiful place. The energy is so lovely, and it's a place that we've holidayed at a number of years, my wife and I. I guess we, as Paula and I are getting closer to our retirement, we were sort of looking at what our options might be, and talking to John and other folk who are there, who are living there, and just finding what a beautiful lifestyle it is. We thought, well, maybe that's something we ought to consider. So I'm just going to step back a little bit from where John's gone there and look at maybe, you'll see the screen saying retirement reality. Look at what the real situation seems to be for so many people in Australia at the moment. It's all very well us saying, okay, let's just, go and do and make this move. But let's look a little bit more into it. So this is some research that I've done here. It's basically saying that in order for people to retire comfortably, the government is suggesting that we need $58,364 a year to live just a comfortable retirement in Australia. So this is according to the Australian Securities and Investment Commission. So $58,364 per year needed to retire. And we'll look at the next little piece, which John's going to bring up for us in just a second. Okay, great. So in order to generate $58,364 a year, ASIC is suggesting that we need $538,000 invested to actually provide that income. That's fine if we've got $538,000 invested. The bad news, as it says there, is that the money actually runs out at age 87. So assuming you're going to retire at 65, it's, come 87, there's nothing left in the kitty, which is all a bit sad. particularly since my mum is almost 90 and she can still kick higher than I can. So, yeah, I don't think I'd want to be running out of money at age 87. So what they're also suggesting is if you want it to last for 35 years, so that's, it's probably more realistic, the amount required is $920,000. And you can see that's from the Super Guide, is the source. $920,000 of savings in order to retire on that much, and that's not actually giving you a huge income. The reality here against that is this example here of AMP policyholders. And they're saying that, if you're aged between 50 and 55, most people have got in their super fund about $80,000 and, a little bit more if you're 55 to 59. So somewhere between $80,000 and $90,000 is what people seem to actually have. Although, as you can see, $920,000 is the amount which they say that you require. A huge shortfall there, and that's where that becomes a bit of a problem. So, as someone who was involved in the superannuation industry before I got into building, I'm very much aware that, back in the 80s, superannuation companies sold their policies. They showed a projected growth rate of 13 to 18%. So that's what they sold it on, and all of the projections going forward were showing that sort of growth rate. You can see the actual, the facts themselves, according to AustralianSuper.com, the actual growth rate since 1997 has been 4.45%, and over 10 years is 4.24%, way short of that 13 to 18% that I, along with everybody else who took super out at that stage, were expecting. So I guess that explains why we were expecting to have something like our $900,000 in super, and a lot of us have actually got closer to $80,000. Little comment at the bottom there, growth figures from major funds are almost impossible to find, and the question is why. I'd imagine because they're too embarrassed to tell you. So that's superannuation. It really hasn't given a lot of folks as much as they really require. The other thing that people are suggesting is that you would have your family home, and you perhaps have a number of homes, and then you get a large home. As your kids leave home, you then sort of think, well, maybe it's time to downsize, and we're going to save that money and top it into maybe our super or into our retirement fund. So example here saying that you lived in the same home for some years, and the property obviously has grown enormously in value. So you no longer need such a big home, so you decide to downsize and invest the savings. You can either stay in the same area and maybe buy a unit, or you can move to an outer suburb and buy a smaller house. And I guess that's the thing. If you've got friends in an area, if you've been there for some time, you're used to the shops, the same doctor, and so on, you're probably a bit loath to moving too far away. So a lot of people's idea would be that they would stay in that area, maybe just move to a unit or something. The idea of moving to a house further out in the suburbs is probably less appealing, but some people do that. So the problem then becomes that the cost between the house and the unit, if you're staying in the same area, is actually not that much different. We've got a couple of examples on the next slide here where they actually show, we're looking at Western Australia here. So Bassendean being an example of a typical median house price in Bassendean's $528,000. Median unit price $399, so there's only $128,000 difference between one and the other. In Kiara a little more, and Burswood a little less. So these are fairly typical of Western Australia, and I assume that they'd be the same throughout Australia. So assuming then you've decided to downsize from the house to the unit, you've then got some costs that you've got to pay, and they'd be agents' fees and stamp duties and moving charges and moving into your new home and so on. So of that sort of 120-odd thousand that you might get, you'll end up burning a fair portion of that. So there's the thing. Perhaps some folk may find they don't have enough super, and the idea of actually selling the family home and putting that funding into their retirement is not really realistic. So what we're going to look at here was, okay, well, rather than investing in Australia, what would happen if we turned our eyes towards Bali and see what the options might be there? And this is the examples that we've come off here. So I guess the first one is saying, look, if we just invested the money in Australia, and a lot of people have bought an investment property. This is fairly typical here of an apartment that you might invest in Melbourne. It's just a little unit in an apartment building. It's about 60 square metres in size. Typical return is going to be about 4% on capital, and I guess interest rates are around 5% or thereabouts. Assuming you've got 100% occupancy, you've got tenants in there all the time, the median bank value is about $480,000, and they're showing growth rate of 2.4%. So that's fairly typical of what you could find in Australia. And that 4% return on capital, one of the biggest investment groups in the country, one of their criteria that they've put to me over the years is that we need to be able to show a 4% return on capital to make it worthwhile for them to advise their clients to get involved in that sort of an investment. So that's fairly typical of what you'd find in Australia. If we look at some examples moving across to Bali, I've got 4 examples here, and they're all quite different to each other. So I'll just start off with this one here. This is a lovely investment. It's an established home in Ubud, an established village. It's got rice fields on both sides. It was designed by a European fashion designer. It's lovely inside. It's a truly beautiful place. And so this example here, you can see is quite different to the Australian version. Now, it's been established for a number of years, so it's got a trading record. So these are actual figures that they've managed to accumulate. So the return on capital has been 12 to 18%. When they were doing 12%, that was really when the owner was spending a fair bit of time there and having all their friends come and stay. And then they decided, well, we perhaps ought to put it out to rent, so they've been getting a higher return since. The average occupancy in Ubud is around 70%. What we're using here are using much lower occupancy. In fact, this one we're using 50% as our guide. And we're showing at a 50% occupancy, there's a 10% return, as opposed to that 4% in Australia. They've actually been getting 88% occupancy towards the end now, and because they've been marketing it themselves on Airbnb, they've found that they've got higher and higher within Airbnb. So they're getting very good reviews, and they've managed to take the rent up from the $220 a night that they started on through to $365 a night that they now have. This is a lovely villa, and it was on the market for $255,000. So you can see it's not an expensive development. It's got very good returns on it. And we found out just before starting this webinar tonight that there's an offer being placed on this home, and so we're just now waiting to hear back if the offer's been accepted. So that's really of a sort of thing that could be done there. Really good capital growth, good occupancy, and good returns. That's the first example. Second example we'll go across to is also up in Ubud. Now, this is a project. This is a 4-villa development. One of the villas has been sold. There are 3 remaining. This is beautifully designed. It's designed by an Australian designer working with an Indonesian architect. They've done some spectacular projects around Ubud, and we'd love to be able to show you some of the ones that they're currently building and some of the past ones and so on. This particular one is in a little town called Laplapan, which is just about 2.8 kilometres out of the centre of Ubud. So very close in. It's a beautiful little village, nice streets running through it, high-speed internet access and so on, and right on the edge of a valley. So there's a jungle valley sort of where this pool, in fact, where the photo or the drawing is taken from the edge of the pool, probably standing in the jungle looking back onto the house. Just to give you an idea here of this as a business model. So, saying let's not move into the house, let's just use it as a business. Let's see what the returns are going to be like. So the purchase price on that, $450,000. So it's a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom villa, and it's really quite lovely. The rental income, we've assumed $350 a night. And again, we've used a 50% occupancy, remembering that Ubud 70% is what's really they're finding up there. So based on those figures, an income of $63,700 a year, being a 14.15% gross return. The annual cost there of $11,500, basically that's paying for a full-time maid, having security for the villas, having a gardener and pool cleaner, so they're all taken care of for you, paying for the power, paying for gas, all the running costs on the whole on that property. So if we take that off the gross amount, it's giving us an income of $52,180 a year. 11.59%, which is pretty nice compared with that 4% that we were showing for Australia. As I said, that was using a 50% occupancy, so we're trying to be fairly conservative. Now, if you just said, okay, well, let's use this purely as an investment. It's invested half of the year, so we can spend a bit of time there. But we're primarily using it as an investment, so all of the money's going back in. In 8.6 years, it shows there, it's fully paid out. So in 8.6 years' time, you own it outright, and you've got some options as to what you might choose to do from there. Okay, so we can move on to the next one. Thanks, John. And look at what those options might be. So, said in 8.6 years' time, we've ended up with a fully paid for home. This is the first option, which is giving you an income of $52,180 a year. So, looking at how much income is required to retire in Australia, that's looking pretty good. The first option is just saying, okay, it's still a retirement, it's still an investment property, and it's providing that income. The second option might be saying, well, if it's paid out completely, so why don't we retire there, or let's use it as a holiday house. So it's fully paid for, and you could maybe rent it out a little bit if when you want to come back to Australia, that'd pay your costs and so on. So that's the second option there. The third option might be that you could say, well, look, let's spend 6 months of the year in Bali and 6 months of the year in Australia. And I think that's probably what a lot of folk would want to do, because, you want to come back for Christmas, you want to come back for families and birthdays and those sorts of things. So that might be a good option there. So if you decided to live in it for 6 months and then live here for 6 months, that would provide you 6 months accommodation and an income of $26,000 a year, which seems to be fairly nice. The other thing, of course, you could do, obviously, at the end of that 8.6 years is just sell it. Now, with the growth that we're seeing in property in Bali generally, you can assume that the profit would be very good. So there are 4 options there. Whichever one you chose, I'm sure they'd all be equally as good, and depending on what your own needs would be. So that's the second one. Now, the third one.
Just quickly on there, we've got some questions on there. We're talking about Aussie USD. We are talking all Aussie dollars this evening on everything that you see here. Also, I just wanted to add to this conversation that, this kind of investment, so we're talking about you can simply sell it for handsome profit. There are some things to consider around here, but one of them is that these properties can be held in self-managed supers. They can be held in trusts, they can be held in offshore business structures, they can be held in all sorts of different things that you want to do. So there can be amazing options on how you actually manage the money on this, and how you do that. And the way of actually getting into this and stuff like that is actually a far simpler process than lots of people end up getting caught up in. And there's a process. So there's a process of how you get in there. There's a process of how you hold on, how you take possession of this. There's all sorts of things that goes on. And basically, for this to work, you want to make sure you've got an extraordinarily well-versed team on your side to help you make sure that this all works, in the way that we're talking about this evening. Because at the end of the day, we see lots of I'm going to put inverted commas cowboys come in here and think they can just come and do what they like, and really get burnt and go back with their tails between their legs. So some big things here is knowing that one thing that we've got to always consider, and also part of the reason why the business name is Exquisite Properties, is that these kinds of investments, you want to have an exquisite architected villa or structure that's been beautifully designed and managed in its actual development and build for you to actually achieve this. Because there's lots of people that are doing it in a different way. So there's some things that you want to make sure that you pitfalls that you want to step over. A big thing here, of course, we are talking about Aussie dollars there, and of course a lot of stuff, almost all of the villas are charged out in US dollars, it's with 30% on top of that in Australia. These numbers, as much as we're talking Australian dollars, when you convert it into actual US dollar charge rates, that's actually the reality of it, is that there's another 30% on everything that we're probably talking about because of the US dollar Aussie exchange rate and the fact that everything is now charged out on that. We're also talking about, and I'm also just looking at questions as they come through, tax implications, properties freehold or leasehold. They're all leasehold that we talk about. There's a reason why we suggest leasehold for two reasons. Number one, freehold is actually illegal in this country for an expat to hold onto freehold, leasehold, and there's lots of people trying different things and actually losing their properties. So there are potentially ways around that, not for the conversation that we have here. So leasehold is the only one that we represent. And for a second reason is that why would you pay full price for something that you can have full control of for the entire time of that lease, have ways of optioning up, secondary, ongoing leases as well. So your actual investment is far lower because it's a lease rather than a full purchase, and therefore your return is far higher. But the third one, which is the most important to us, is the fact that we're not here to take property away from the Balinese people. We're here to actually add value to them and their families, and consider the opportunity for us to be able to hand back a home after 25 years or 40 years, depending on these leases that we have, to a property owner that gives them an extraordinary investment to pass on to their next generation or generations to come. How that would uplift the entire country in its own financial way as well, which is an extraordinary gift, an extraordinary contribution. So that's a big part of that.
It's certainly been something that that John and I discussed right from day one of how could we add value. We don't like the idea of stripping value from a country. We're guests in their country, and eventually the idea would be that the property would return to Balinese people. By the time it were returned to them, any investor has had such good return out of it. They're probably, this example, the one that you see on screen at the moment, has a 25-year lease. There's already an agreed extension to that lease at a price which has already been negotiated for a further 25 years. And, I guess if needs be, it may be extended again, but it might be at that stage it's time to return it to the Indonesian people. And that's something that the purchaser would make the decision on. That's not our decision, but we certainly are coming from the place of improving what we start with and eventually giving it back.
Yeah. Just a couple of things, because the questions are coming through, Hilton, and it's great because we're like right in the middle of we've got a couple more examples, so it's great to just get clarity on this before we go into the next ones. So we're talking about management fees. Where the fees that we've got in here, that is actually management of your villa. That's having somebody full time looking after your villa, managing it, and being responsible essentially for what happens in there, potentially even managing your bookings and all that type of thing, all inside of their role. So yes, that is correct. What else? Sorry, go.
In the business plan that we've used there on the previous slide with the returns that we were showing the costs of the project, which included staffing and so on. Also in there, I should have mentioned there is a 5% allowance, a 5% fee for rental. If it be Airbnb or whoever you choose that you might use, we've allowed 5% in there for booking fees. So it's fully managed. There's funding taken into account there for letting it out. So we're trying to cover all eventualities. Realistically, we're not trying to use smoke and mirrors here. It's quite straightforward. Yep. In fact, the first example that we showed has a 3-year trading history, and we've got all the figures on that. And the others, which I'm going to show you, are similar to that. So, yeah. That's where we're coming from.
And of course, just that first one also has pre-bookings for the next 3 to 6 months. So people are buying cash flow that's already in there that gets passed to them the moment they take ownership. Some more questions here around option pricing, Hilton. I know that option pricing is a negotiation that happens, and it's something that you can put in to some properties that you do in Bali, depending how you do that. Option pricing, let's just talk about this one in this one here, because you've got an option on this one here. What is the option for the next 25 years on that?
Okay, so we've already negotiated and this one is particularly good because we have a 25-year agreement. We have an agreement to extend it for a further 25 years at 10% more than we leased the first 25 years. So it's a pretty spectacular one there. So that's pretty fantastic. The
general option on leases is basically at market value, so the fact that these have been negotiated at different rates are extraordinary. So
also, as far as the options go, often you'll find that there's two different things. One you can do is you can do it at the market value. You could do it at the market value of just the land value or the improved value. And I guess that's the sort of thing where we this is where our experience comes in, and we can negotiate these things with the landowners. And every property is quite individual. So, there's not a sort of an across the board, either this or that. It's very much an individual thing. And we've spent a lot of time, John and I, and our other associates, developing different ways to purchase, different means and so on, and whether you're purchasing it, say, as part of your superannuation fund, which is going to be the next slide I'll show you, but whether you purchase it as part of a superannuation fund, whether you form a company in Indonesia. Now, we've also looked into this, and we've found that you can form a company. There's some real advantages in doing that as well. It may be that for some people that's a cost that they don't need to have, but for other people who want to be absolutely protected, that's maybe something they want to have. So we've spent a lot of time looking at different scenarios, and we can certainly advise people on that. But probably our strongest advice would be not to purchase land. As John said, it's illegal. Lots of people do it. You have a nominee who's, an Indonesian person who supposedly has 5% or less of ownership of it, and the government is starting to say that's just a I don't even know what the word is. It's just done so that you can bend the rules, and sooner or later they're going to go, So the best thing is if we do it as a lease, everybody's happy. eventually the land's going to come back to the Balinese people, so the owners are happy, the village is happy, the government's certainly happy, and you can have a lease for a period of time. We're going to look at one at the end, which has got quite a spectacular period on it. So maybe, are we right, John, if we move to actually just jumping on that property?
There's a bunch of other questions in here, Matt, and everyone who's putting these questions here. Thank you for the great questions, Matt. You're clearly got a lot of experience in property, and you're asking fabulous questions. So let's take those offline, so that we can just finish with here this evening, and we'll get back to you after this. And anyone else's questions that we haven't answered, we'll go through all the questions at the end, and we will get hold of you and answer each one of them individually. Let's have a look at the next example over here.
Okay. Example is down in Sanur. So the two that we've looked at previously have been up in the mountains in Ubud, where John lives. Now this one is down in Sanur, down at the beach. This is quite an interesting one, and this is really one which is more focused for people for self-managed superannuation investments. This is not one you're ever going to go live in, but this is one, rather than buying that villa or that apartment in Melbourne, here's one here, which is, it's just over $242,000. So it's not an expensive investment. And the location is quite lovely. We'll look at the map in a sec of where it is and some pictures of inside. But look, this one here, it's a development that's being done. It's a 20 villa development in Sanur. It's about 80 metres, I guess, from the main street where all the shops, the cafes and restaurants are. And then you'd walk straight across that street down onto probably another 50 or 60 metres down onto the beach. You'd walk through one of the resorts. So its location is really, really good. There are 20 villas in this development, which is about to be built. The developers themselves are very experienced. They've got 40 years of development experience. They've just recently finished a 140 villa development on the, I guess around maybe Seminyak Way. This is a project which they're doing in Sanur. They currently have a hotel, a villa development, a restaurant, a backpackers hotel in that area. So they're very experienced. They're currently in business there. And so they just say, well, this is the next thing they want to get into. As John pointed out before, this is one that they think so good they're actually keeping quite a number of the villas to themselves, because they see this as a really good investment. So there are 20 villas, 14 of them are 1 bedroom, and the rest of them are 2 bedroom. They're fully managed. And at the front of the development is like a reception welcoming area. There's a restaurant to the side of that. The villas are all behind. Every villa has its own pool. They're very stylish, and they're just the sort of places where if you're going to Sanur, you'd love to stay, because, very comfortable, modern. They've got a pool, just, a couple of minutes walk to the restaurant, a couple more minutes to the beach. So not too expensive, $242,750 to get into the 1 bedroom one. As I said, they're fully managed, and all the management costs, everything is taken into account. There's an allowance in there for maintenance. As I said, they're very experienced in doing that. Using a 60% occupancy, they're showing a return of 9.38% net. Capital growth on top of that, obviously, you'd pick up whatever capital growth, and then they would on-sell it to other people. We know that there'd be a waiting list for them. These are going to go, I think, very quickly. They're about to be released in the next week or so. I guess one little advantage in there as well is that there's 2 weeks free villa usage, but it's primarily as an investment for your superannuation fund. Of course, the fact that you got 2 weeks villa usage every year means that your trip across to Bali becomes tax deductible, which can't be bad. Of course, the thing with self-managed super is you're not allowed to actually make use of the property itself. So you couldn't stay in that one, but because there are 20 villas in the development, I'm sure that you could stay in the one next door or the one in front. Yeah, as I said, it becomes a tax deduction. Now, I think a 9.38% net return is pretty good for a super fund for property plus capital growth. The actual occupancy that these guys have got in their other ones are closer to 80%, and they can tell us more for serious buyers.
Yeah, on this one here, these guys are, as Hilton said, these guys are super experienced. Their development in Nusa Dua is extraordinary. Their management and their advertising marketing budgets are extraordinary as well. So they're very good at what they do in actually getting people into the villas, managing them, managing all the stuff that you and I don't want to do. These ones are quite extraordinary because these ones got a 30-year lease, if you remember that, on these ones, plus option. So again, quite a large option there. So when you start looking at that and you start looking at that kind of price point of 242, 30 years, that kind of return, now suddenly you're thinking, well, actually, even if I kept it for 15 years and sold it another 15 years plus the option, that you're going to get a really strong capital growth on that as well, which we're not even. It says excellent capital growth. It's extraordinary when you get that amount of time on a lease. Again, what we're doing is we're really choosing the best stuff we can find in Bali, as well as the properties that we're developing ourselves. We've taken a lot of time and we've been really careful on who we work with and what kind of properties that we represent. This is one of those those investment opportunities that would absolutely fit all of our criteria. On your 2 weeks, you can stay longer, of course, which is it's kind of optional, and that just comes out of the rental pool that you have as well. Just if you want to come along and have a look at these ones, have a look at their existing ones, like the Jura villas that are in Sanur. These are examples of the extraordinary work that they do. All their work is at the top end of the market, for highest quality people who are looking for something which is quite unique and beautifully finished.
It's going to be a lovely project, and I think that'll be snapped up quickly. The two photos or the renderings on the left are just an indication of how they'll be. So they'll be landscaped like this. You can see that each one will have its own pool and deck. Inside, they've assured us that the furnishings will be exactly as they are, so they're not just indications, they're as they will actually be. So they're going to be quite delightful villas. The map, as you can see Kasari Estate, so it's on Jalan Kasari, which is the road which just runs away from the beach there, from the main road there, which is showing where all the restaurants and cafes and businesses are. And then you can see you've got the Bali Hyatt very close, the new Sari Sanur Resort, and also the new Maya Sanur Resort, which is probably just about under where the Kasari Estate sign is. That's quite spectacular. So the location is beautiful. That one, I think, just for a super fund, that's just a really nice investment. Let's just flick over to the last one, because we don't want to keep going on all night about them. But this one here.
Well, we do. It's very exciting.
So we're trying to show you things which are quite different. And this one here is very different again. This is a lovely project. It's been completed. It's back up in Ubud. It's surrounded by jungle. And this one, these are super villas. There are a number, well, there's 9 completed at the moment, and another 9 to be completed. Some of them are 2-storied, some of them are single-storied. They all have pools. You can see the jungle, which is in the picture there. That's actually falling away quite spectacularly. It drops straight down, and at the bottom of it is a jungle river. I've seen a water wheel turning there, and you can hear the local kids swimming in there. It's just such a great place. It's very silent. It's just a beautiful location. It's a gated community, so it's been fully developed by 2 Australians who are very creative people. They've done it as a walled enclosure, so it's just quite private, fully landscaped throughout, and all the landscaping, all the maintenance and so on is all taken care of as part of the agreement here. Now, these ones we're using as an example here. And again, look, this is one where we're saying, look, if you used it as a business, but a lot of people may not do so. They may just want a gorgeous home in Bali. But here's an example here of purchasing one of them at $550,000. It's a 3-bedroom villa, 300 square metres of living space, plus decks, plus pool, and plus the grounds around. And so the grounds are quite spectacular. Again, look, we've used a rental income there of $350 a night, which is pretty conservative, along that 60% occupancy, which again is below average. Now, that's providing a 14% gross return. If you rented it out short term, that would be, we're showing with the cost there, an 11% net return, or an 8.8% return if you just said, let's just put a tenant in, do it year by year, let's pick up the capital growth, and, you know, be a very good investment for you. If you're not quite ready to move into it for a few years, you could say, well, let's have it paying for itself. When we're ready to move up there, that's the sort of return we'll have got. This one here is, again, we're talking about leases, and to show the difference between each of them, this one here is the land itself is temple land. So what that means is the village has to use the land productively, but they found this particular land is not going to be very good for growing rice on. I guess it's maybe just too steep. So they decided that it wasn't going to be a place for growing rice, so they decided they would do something else with it. So they've made it available to the gentlemen who've done this development. And the lease they've been able to come up with, because it's temple land, is a 40-year lease. Now, this is quite extraordinary, even in Bali. A 40-year lease with an agreement for an extension for another 40 years if you'd want to have that. So here you've got this property which you can purchase, which is basically you've got an 80-year agreement for leasing it. And I mean, at any stage along the way, you might choose to sell it. We think that this is just a beautiful project. Its use of different materials, and the way that each of the villas is different to the other. Some of them have got raking ceilings. Some of them have got living rooms above and sleeping below. There's just different combinations. It's so creatively done, and that's all there. If you happen to be coming up to Bali, our guys up there, I'd love to be able to show you this. But this is sort of quite different to the other ones. We've shown you one for superannuation. We've shown you a lovely architectural one for maybe keeping, maybe renting as well. And this is quite different again. So this is, there's lots of different options there for you.
The extraordinary thing about this one, and the builders are quite eccentric. They had some real desirable outcomes when they started building this. And one of their desirable outcomes was, we don't want to sell anything off plan. We want to build at least the one side of the development before we even talk to anyone on the market. And literally in the last month or so, they finished the last lacquer of paint on the doors and on the walls, and opened this up to ourselves to invite to getting some people to come and have a look. So this one has 8 extraordinary super villas already built, brand spanking new, and literally, we're taking people through there right now. So, this type of thing is, it's what's so lovely about it. It's there, it's constructed. You buy it and you can move in. You buy it and you can put it on the market instantly. There's a couple of them that are getting rented out right now. So it's, there's only 8 of them right now, which are these ones, and then there's another 8 or 9, I think, getting built in phase 2, which is away from this. So you actually won't even there won't be any noise and stuff like that you'll get from there, that's very smartly designed. The way that they've staged this and kept enough space away from it so that it actually one doesn't affect the other. So quite idealistic in the way that they created this. It was extraordinary to walk into it and go, oh my goodness, we've got an amazing development, all done, ready to go. And the finishes here are amazing. The land is each unit is on probably 500 or 600 square meters, or even bigger, 700 square meters on some of them. They're on big pieces of land, and the houses are very generous all around as well. So this is one of the most delightful places that I've had the honor to go and visit in Bali as a development, and in Ubud. It's totally unique. There's nothing like this up in Ubud that even comes close to the development quality here.
We've got a lot of photographs too, right throughout the different villas and the outside areas and so on too. So they're all available if anybody wants to have a look. This is an example here of one of the living areas here. You can see this is just a raking ceiling in this living space. It's all very open. It's got sliding doors that can close it all in, but basically everything folds back. And just gives you a gorgeous living space. That veranda out there, this is up a little higher, there's living area below and the pool down there as well. But the view from that deck there across is looking down into the river. It's quite lovely. So the question at the top there is saying, can you see yourself living here? Well, pretty nice place to be, I'd have thought.
Great.
And I guess we can move on to the last little part there, John, which is really, I guess, a summary of what we've been discussing.
Yeah. Hey, Hilton. Thank you so much for going through all of the details of all that and keeping it light and fun and interesting, because that kind of there's a lot of detail in there, but it's exciting. I guess the exciting part is that there are options. So let's just look at what we've covered today. Really, in conclusion, there's two ways we can go. Number one, you can choose to live where you are, downgrade your lifestyle when it gets to that style, when you're no longer earning, and that may be a choice. Invest in a negatively geared property and keep topping it up, and do that with on the shortfall with your hard-earned cash every single month. Continue investing with your current super manager in the percentage return that is probably not so exciting. So that's one option. Or we can consider that there's other ways of doing this. And really, this conversation really was to discuss some of these options for you. Could you choose to retire now with an investment that's actually going to increase the current lifestyle that you have? It's going to add to what you're already doing because of the return that it can add. Is the environment that you're living in right now the one that you really want to be in? Would you love to actually find a different environment to be living in, and find new supportive communities that are coming together and making different decisions? They call in this country, they call them digital nomads. I'm a digital nomad. Maybe there's a different option for you here that you can have so much more to support you at a fraction of the costs. And of course, I love this one because you can have your cake and eat it. You can have both. Why not? Come live here for 6 months, go live back in Australia for 6 months. Have that continuous, ongoing summer that never ends. It doesn't have to just be in the movies. It can be actually your life, whatever you decide your life to be. And this is why we're here. This is why Hilton's jumping on a plane in the next few days to come over here. His wife's jumping on a plane tomorrow. She's going to be right here, and we're building our life and a different choice around our lifestyle in Bali. And we've got a lot of other people that we've encouraged to come along, and who have come and who are here and who are investing and are living extraordinary lives that they couldn't imagine living back in the country that they were in, be it South Africa, Australia, US, England. They're coming from all over the world. What is your life, your lifestyle look like? What does your future look like? Where would you love to be? What are the kind of people you'd love to have around you? And this gives you some options. And there's a lot of different ways you can do it. I haven't answered a whole bunch of questions because essentially there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do it. You can design and build your own. Find your own. Find some land. We have lots of land options that we have that we can show you and talk about. You can build and design your own home. You can take it straight off the plan. Minimize all that risk and concern and worry and all the extra time that goes into that. Take something that's off the plan, that's already proven. Take it fully managed. With a proven management company and proven returns. You can get brand new and spanking new. Literally, the paint is just drying as we walk into it. Or you can go and get something that's existing that has years of time in the market that shows and proves its cash flow and its potential and already has future bookings that you can just take over and either manage yourself or have the management company manage for you. You can start in here at a couple hundred grand. This is very, very inexpensive, but there's lots of different ways of financing it, lots of different ways of getting it started, lots of different availability for you to actually, do things that far more than you may even believe is possible for you right now.
We also know what people's expectations are, and the things that we're doing are what Australians or international people would expect. I think if you were to go there and say, well, let's do something ourselves. Yeah, that's great. But there are some risks involved in that. And I guess everybody knows, you hear all the horror stories about, people doing it wrong. But the fact that, we're working, for instance, when we're building, we're working with an Australian designer. We have an Indonesian architect and building company who's very experienced. There are projects on the ground which we can show people. My background of being involved in building for 25 years and John being on the ground there and doing his own developments and so on, we know what people's expectations are and we've geared ourselves to doing that. So I think we can offer a service which will take the risk out of people and just make it an exciting experience.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that, Hilton. So really simple. The conversation today is really to open up some options for you and to get into a conversation. And really, the opportunity is to connect with us. You'll see Hilton's email address at the bottom there. All the emails that you're getting sent from me, you can just reply to any of those because that'll come back to me as well. So there's a few things that we're doing. And one of them is called the Bali Discovery Tour. Come and discover your own piece of paradise. Have a look at what's there. Come have a look at all the different developments we have, and sit down with us and map out what you'd love to achieve for yourself. So that's one thing that we're doing. And of course, coming up to December and Christmas, stuff like that. If you want to jump on a plane and come over and visit. I saw some of us saying in the conversation, yeah, well, I'm coming. I'd like to see you. So great, thank you. Come along and we'll set up a discovery tour around that. You can welcome to jump on a conversation, 30-minute private appointment with Hilton. There's his email address. Shoot that through. He'll set an appointment with you and have a look at what finance options are available for you, and what's suitable based on your specific situation. Of course, pop on and if anything that you saw on the presentation today was of particular interest, then let us know, and we can send you a whole bunch of information on that. And of course, what we will do is we'll send everybody a copy of our latest. I don't know if you can actually. I'm not too sure you can actually. Can you see that, Hilton? This is our latest newspaper, Bali Investor. This is our publication. If you've been to Bali, you may recognize it. And inside of that publication, we're talking about all the different options that Australians have. There's some great articles, and there's a little bit of information on each one of the investments that we spoke about this evening. So we'll be getting everybody who is on the call. I'll be sending you an electronic version of that. And if you come to Bali, you'll be able to pick that up in any of your local stores and coffee shops all around Bali. So we'll get that. So at least you've got that in front of you to reference and to pass on to others that that you may know who would love to have the opportunity to see this as well. That is about it from us. And we've gone a little bit, given that we started at about 10 past, we've gone about 10 minutes over. So thank you again for your patience. Everybody's still here. I think, Colin had to run. Thanks, Colin. But yeah, thank you everybody for being on the call. Super excited to have you on the call, number one. Thank you so much for all those questions. What we will do, we'll go through every one of those questions, and anything that we didn't answer, we will put out as a question and answer, so that everybody can learn from everybody's questions, and allow you to all see that. So that'll help from that perspective, rather than having one-on-one conversations to everybody. And of course, we'd love to reach out and connect with you. Hilton's going to be following up with those questions and be chatting to you real shortly. So look out for an email and a call from him. And if you're in Australia, it'll be a local call. Or otherwise, send him your details and he'll call you wherever you are in the world. Thank you again. Looking forward to seeing you here in Bali. Come to join us and have a bit of fun and spend a bit of time enjoying the sun and the gorgeousness of this beautiful country, and maybe a few margaritas and with us on the beach. Looking forward to seeing you soon. Have a beautiful evening.